Have you ever felt like you were finally on track with your mental fitness?
Oh, yeah.
You've got the routine down, the morning meditation, the exercise, all the healthy habits, and then just seemingly out of nowhere, you hit a wall.
The wall.
The routine breaks. A toxic habit pops back up. You have one of those emotional overload moments, and suddenly you look up and realize you haven't stuck to your plan for 4 days, maybe even a whole week.
And that's the universal setback, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so frustrating because for almost all of us, the first reaction, that internal voice, is immediate.
I should be stronger.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
why can't I ever stick to anything?
Yeah.
We go straight to this paralyzing self-criticism. We don't analyze, we just judge.
Yeah.
And we ask what is probably the most damaging question you can ask. What's wrong with me?
That internalized blame, that's the trap. It is an absolute growth killer. When we blame ourselves, we don't learn anything. We just feel shame.
And shame makes you want to hide or just give up on the strategy completely. You get stuck in this loop of judgment, not productive refinement.
But what if there was a completely different way to look at this? What if we told you that entire industries, high-stakes industries, view setbacks in a totally different light?
They see them as data, not as reflections of personal failure, but as incredibly valuable data points.
And that's the paradigm shift we need. It's what we're talking about today. We are moving beyond that emotional who's to blame reaction and adopting a really powerful framework. It's called black box thinking, or BBT,
Right.
for your own personal well-being.
Right, applying an industrial strength system to our own minds.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to show you exactly how to implement black box thinking in your own mental fitness journey. We want to help you transform those things you see as failures, that missed meditation, that outburst into objective, actionable data for building real, lasting resilience.
System improvement for the self.
So this term, black box thinking, I think most people have a vague idea, but where does it actually come from?
Well, it comes from probably the most rigorously safety-focused industry in the world, aviation. The author Matthew Syed really popularized this idea.
Right, the black box on an airplane?
Exactly. After any serious incident, what's the first thing they do? Investigators race to find the flight recorder.
Yeah.
The literal black box.
And the goal there is so critical. It's not about finding a scapegoat.
Not at all. There's no finger pointing. The entire singular focus is on objectively analyzing the data. I'm talking cockpit voice recordings, telemetry, mechanical data, everything.
To understand what went wrong.
Precisely. What went wrong with the system? They're looking for systemic flaws, operational errors, environmental factors, anything that contributed. They need to know exactly what happened so they can make sure it never, ever happens again.
And that is the key difference, isn't it? It's pure, rigorous data collection dedicated to solving a problem. And it leads to concrete systemic improvements.
Yes. Changes in training.
Yeah.
Modifications to the actual aircraft design, new procedures. Syed calls it the ultimate learning culture. Aviation basically embraces failure as the most valuable data you can possibly get for improvement.
And he draws a pretty stark contrast between aviation and, say, healthcare.
A huge contrast. In many parts of traditional healthcare, the fear of blame, of litigation, of damaging your career, it can cause errors to be concealed.
Or minimized or blamed on a junior person.
Right. And when you hide a mistake, you lose the opportunity for that system-wide analysis. You lose the chance for the kind of progress that could save thousands of lives in the long run.
So if you hide your own errors from yourself, you're doing the same thing. You lose the chance to learn and adapt.
They're grounding yourself.
Yeah.
Effectively. So if we formalize this a bit, BBT has a few core principles that come right from that process.
Okay.
First is a no-blame culture. The focus is always on the what and the how, never the who. It's about removing the ego from the equation.
Okay, no blame. What's second?
Second, a rigorous analysis of failure. Every setback, every single deviation from your plan is treated like an opportunity for a deep, objective investigation.
And third, the whole point is systemic improvement. What you learn has to lead to actual changes in your process or your environment or your routine, not just feeling bad about it.
Exactly. And finally, that all feeds into continuous learning. It's a cycle. You identify an issue, you implement a fix, you reevaluate. It just keeps going.
So applying this to my mental fitness, my relapse into negative self-talk isn't a moral failure.
It's an incident.
An incident that offers crucial data for refining my mental strategies.
Now you're thinking like an investigator. And that brings us right to the application part, the problem-first approach. This is how you actually do black box thinking in your daily life.
It's about shifting that internal self-talk.
A huge shift.
Hmm.
It's moving from a blame-oriented mindset to one that's all about objective understanding.
So the simple but very hard part is this. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And you start asking.
What went wrong with the strategy or the environment that led to this outcome?
And that is so difficult. I mean, when you're feeling shame, the last thing you want to do is grab a notebook and act like a detective.
Right. You want to hide under the covers. You don't want to investigate.
But I do have to ask, is there a danger here that this no-blame approach lets you off the hook? That you can just shirk personal responsibility for the effort?
That's a great question, and it's where the rigor comes in. See, BBT isn't about avoiding responsibility. It's about redirecting it.
Redirecting it how?
You're moving it from passive guilt, like I'm a bad person, to active improvement, which is I am responsible for fixing this system. The aviation crew, they take responsibility for redesigning the checklist, not for feeling guilty about the crash.
So it replaces guilt with empowerment. It still requires effort, but it's productive effort.
Exactly. So let's make this really concrete. Let's use a scenario. Say you commit to a 15-minute meditation practice every morning, but this past week you missed 4 out of the 7 days. The habit is starting to crumble. The old way, the blame mindset, just hits you with, I'm not disciplined enough.
Or, I guess meditation just isn't for me. Then you feel guilty and you just stop. The data is totally lost.
Right. But the problem-first approach. It treats those 4 missed sessions like 4 separate incident reports. You become the investigator. You pull out the metaphorical black box.
And you start asking very specific, data-driven questions. Okay, so when was the meditation planned? 7:00 a.m.
Yep. Now we drill down. Was 7:00 a.m. actually realistic? Did your kids need breakfast? Right at 6:45. Was there a work email you just had to check the second you woke up?
What about the environment? Was the room noisy? Was your phone, which is a portal to a million distractions, sitting right next to your mat?
We're going way beyond the surface level, I forgot. We're asking about the preconditions. Were you just exhausted from staying up late? Maybe 15 minutes felt like climbing a mountain on 5 hours of sleep, but 5 minutes might have felt doable.
And what about the feeling itself? What feeling came up when you thought about meditating but then didn't? Was it resistance, tiredness, anxiety about the day?
See, you're totally removing that heavy, paralyzing weight of personal judgment, and you're replacing it with this empowering, actionable framework where every deviation is just a clue.
So instead of concluding, I'm lazy,
Right.
you conclude, okay, the current system, which is 15 minutes at 7 a.m. with my phone nearby, has an 80% failure rate when my sleep drops below 7 hours.
And then you create a hypothesis. Hypothesis, I will try 5 minutes at 6:30 a.m. with the phone charging in another room.
That is a specific, testable hypothesis. It's moving from that vague, abstract judgment into, well, a scientific methodology for your own mind.
That's it, exactly.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting for our listeners, for the learner. We can't just talk about the concept. We need a clear structure to actually integrate this. So we've broken this down into a 5-step implementation plan for your own personal black box.
And step 1 is maybe the hardest, but it's the foundation. Acknowledge, don't judge. This is the no-blame zone. When you notice a dip in your mood, a flash of irritation, or a break in your routine, you have to approach it with immediate curiosity.
And self-compassion.
And self-compassion, yes.
Yeah.
You're training your brain to observe the feeling without that immediate critique. It's, I'm feeling overwhelming anxiety right now, not,
I shouldn't be feeling this way. I'm a failure.
You treat the incident as pure data. You separate the event from your identity. The feeling is just a signal. It's not a verdict on who you are.
Perfect. Then step 2 is gather data. The incident report. Now you're the objective investigator. And this is where people who try journaling can go wrong, because we need facts, not just feelings.
So what specific thought or behavior occurred? When and where did it happen? What were your emotional and physical states leading up to it? You list the preconditions.
Was I tired, stressed, hungry, dehydrated? Even simple things like that.
And you're also noting the external stuff. Did you just get some bad news? Did you just spend 20 minutes doom scrolling on social media? Did you skip your walk? It's moving from, I felt terrible, to, at 3:15 p.m., right after reading that email from my boss, I opened Twitter for 18 minutes and I noticed increased tension in my neck. That level of specificity is crucial, which leads to the heavy lifting. Step 3, identify causal factors. The root cause analysis.
Going deeper than the surface.
Much deeper. The best technique here is the 5 whys. You just ask why over and over again until you hit the core belief or vulnerability.
Let's use the example from the source material. I got overwhelmed and I lashed out at a colleague. That's the surface incident.
Okay, so why did you lash out?
Because I took on too many tasks and felt the deadline pressure.
Okay, why did you take on too many tasks?
Because I really struggle to say no when someone asks me for help.
Third why. Why do you struggle to say no?
Because I tie my self-worth to being seen as the indispensable fixer on the team.
Whoa. Okay, so we're 3 whys in, and we are not talking about a deadline anymore.
Not at all. We're talking about a core belief about self-worth and external validation. That's the systemic root cause. If you'd stopped at deadline pressure, you'd only ever be treating the symptom.
This process reveals those deeper patterns. It turns a simple incident into a huge psychological insight. Which brings us to step 4. Creating solutions. This is formulate actionable insights. The systemic improvement plan. Based on that root cause, you create specific, testable adjustments.
So if the root cause was a chronic lack of sleep, the plan isn't just sleep more.
No, it's too vague.
Yeah.
It would be something like, I will set an alarm for 9:30 p.m. to start my wind-down routine, and my phone will charge in the kitchen after that time.
Or if the root cause was struggling to say no, the plan might be to practice a specific script for declining tasks, or to use, what was it, pre-mortem planning.
Yeah, pre-mortem planning. Right. Where you look ahead at a tough Tuesday morning and you proactively block out 30 minutes of buffer time so you don't get overwhelmed. The solution has to be specific and measurable.
And tied directly to the systemic flaw you found. Okay, and that brings us to the last step, step 5.
Test and iterate. The continuous feedback loop. You implement the change and you keep monitoring. Mental fitness is never a one-and-done thing. It's ongoing refinement.
And if the new strategy fails, if that 9:30 p.m. alarm just doesn't work,
It's just more data for your black box. It's not defeat. It's an instruction to adjust the system again.
and this whole iterative process, it's basically leveraging neuroplasticity, right? You're physically reshaping your brain.
You are. Every time you identify a flaw, create a better strategy, and then successfully execute it, you are literally strengthening new neural pathways.
Yeah.
You're making your mind more resilient through data-driven learning.
Okay, let's apply this whole 5-step process to a more emotionally complex scenario. Let's talk about relapsing into negative self-talk.
A very common one.
So say you've been working really hard on positive affirmations, you're challenging your inner critic, but then a small mistake at work triggers this intense wave of self-criticism that just ruins your whole afternoon.
Okay, so the initial self-blame reaction would be something like, see, I knew these affirmations were useless, I'm just broken.
Right. But we initiate the no-blame zone. We say, my self-talk system reverted to its default setting. This is just information. What were the preconditions?
Step 2, gather data. So the incident happened right after some critical feedback. Check. I was exhausted, only got 5 hours of sleep. Check.
And crucially, you skipped breakfast. So you were low energy, irritable, and that feedback, it just felt disproportionately personal, and it activated this old insecurity about, say, your competence at work.
Okay, now step 3, root cause analysis. The 5 whys. Why did the self-talk spiral out of control this time when it hasn't for weeks?
Well, maybe the current affirmations were too general. They were designed for general anxiety, but they didn't really address that deep-seated belief tying self-worth to performance.
And just as important, the physical component. The lack of sleep and nutrition lowered your emotional resilience to basically 0. It made you hyper-reactive to the criticism.
So the solutions, the actionable insights, they're now clear and they're multi-layered. It's not just do better affirmations.
No, it's about shoring up the system's foundational defenses. Solution A, prioritize sleep and food, especially before days, will be stressful. Resilience starts with biology.
Solution B, tailor the affirmations. Make them specific to that performance-based self-worth belief. Something like, my value as a person is not determined by my output today.
And solution C could be an immediate regulation technique, like 60 seconds of box breathing or a quick walk outside, something to do immediately after receiving feedback to interrupt that emotional spiral before it can grab hold.
This level of analysis and pattern recognition, it can be really hard to do on your own, especially when you're in that emotional state.
That is so true. And that's why our sources point towards using integrated tools that can act as your personal mental fitness black box.
So things like mood trackers.
Right. Mood trackers, interactive mind tools, sometimes they're called thought shredders, detailed emotional habit tracking. They're all designed to make this process easier.
A thought shredder, just to be clear, that's a digital tool that makes you write down a negative thought and then identify the evidence for and against it, right?
Yes, and then formulate a balanced, evidence-based alternative. It basically forces you through step 2 and 3 of the BBT process in a really structured, objective way.
And by using these tools, you're logging the data and the system can start connecting the patterns for you.
Exactly. It might show you that your lowest mood ratings consistently happen after nights you get less than 6 hours of sleep. It makes the whole problem-first approach practical and integrated, and it reduces the cognitive load of having to be a detective for your own mind all the time.
So the ultimate benefit of adopting all of this black box thinking, it seems profound. You develop, I guess, enhanced resilience, that inner steel.
You do, because you learn to adapt to challenges instead of just breaking under them. You gain this really deep self-awareness about your precise triggers and your underlying patterns.
And maybe most importantly, you really cultivate a growth mindset. Failure just loses its power over you.
It loses its power to paralyze you because it's immediately repurposed. It becomes instructional data. You stop feeling like a victim of your emotions, and you become the active architect of your own mental operating system.
So you're not striving for perfection. That's not the goal. Mistakes will still happen.
Mistakes will always happen. You're striving for mastery of continuous improvement.
That feels like the ultimate key takeaway.
I think it is.
Yeah.
To see your mind not as this fixed thing that's either strong or weak, but as a system that is constantly adapting and learning from its own operational data. Your mistakes are just proof that your system is running, maybe just inefficiently. So I have a challenge for you this week. Identify one small deviation from your routine. Maybe you stayed up too late, maybe you snapped at someone, and immediately apply step 1. Acknowledge, don't judge. Just for a moment, resist the shame. View that incident as your personal black box filled with the exact data you need to unlock your next big leap in mental fitness.